Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the why, what and how of newspaper reading. Today we will discuss the articles displayed on the screen from the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 16th October 2018, and the timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So let us start our discussion for the day. The data point on page number 9 talks about the India's ranking under the Human Capital Index. So this is important for us from preliminary examination point of view, and it will form part of the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic Economic and Social Development. Now, this Human Capital Index has been created by the World Bank, and you should know that in the year 2012, a question was asked related to the multi-dimensional poverty index. So that is why such indices become important for us from exam point of view. And you should know that in other years as well, questions have been asked based on important reports or important indices. For example, in the year 2017, a question was asked related to the Global Gender Gap Index. Further, in the year 2018, another question was asked related to Rule of Law Index. And in the year 2014, the question read, which of the following organization brings out the publication known as World Economic Outlook? So these become extremely important for us from exam point of view. So let us understand some of the basic facts that are related to the Human Capital Index. Now, the World Bank has recently released a Human Capital Index, which is a part of its World Development Report 2019. So this is an important fact that the World Development Report is brought out by the World Bank. Further, the theme of this year's World Development Report is the changing nature of work. So theme is also important for us. And finally, as a part of this report, the World Bank has launched a Human Capital Project. And this Human Capital Index is a part of this Human Capital Project. So the Human Capital Project aims at increasing the awareness and increasing the demand for the interventions to build human capital. So it mainly focuses on the development of human capital in various parts of the world. So this program deals with advocacy, measurement and analytical work which is related to the human capital in various parts of the world. So it has mainly three components. So the first component of the Human Capital Project is a new index which is called the Human Capital Index or the HCI. So it is simply a cross-country human capital measurement matrix. So on the basis of this, different countries of the world will be compared in terms of human capital formation. The second component is a program of measurement and research to inform the policy action. So it acts as an advocacy and measurement program as well. And third component of the Human Capital Project is a program of support for country strategies to accelerate investment in human capital. So it will form strategies for different countries to increase the investment in the human capital formation. So these are the three important components of Human Capital Project. Now the Human Capital Index is calculated based on three factors. The first is the survival rate, second is the expected years of quality adjusted school, and the third is the health environment. Now under the survival rate, it is measured by the under 5 mortality rates. So the survival rate is measured by the number of deaths of children under the age of 5. That is the under 5 mortality rates. And the expected years of quality adjusted school is based on both quantity and the quality of education. Now regarding the quality of education, it is measured by test scores from major international student achievement testing programs. So these are based on some standard testing programs around the world, and their scores are compared, and based on that the quality of education is measured. And regarding the quantity of education, the number of years of school that a child can expect to obtain by the age of 18. So this is another factor for measuring the quantity of education. And these years of schooling that a child is expected to obtain by the age of 18 is based on the patterns of enrollment rates in that country. So these are the two criteria on which the quantity and the quality of education is measured. So both these are included in the second factor, that is expected years of quality adjusted school. And the third is related to the health environment. As we know that education, health and the survival are the three important factors of human capital. So the health related environment is calculated based on adult survival rates and the rate of stunting for children under the age of 5. So this also includes the malnutrition prevailing in that country. Now all these factors are important from prelims point of view because you know that the multi-dimensional poverty index that was asked in the year 2012 required us to know the components of that index. So that is why these components of human capital index are also important. Now, when the Human Capital Index is compared to the Human Development Index or the HDI, the HCI uses survival rates and the stunting rates instead of the life expectancy, which means that the life expectancy was measured under the HDI as an indicator for health. And for the education, the HDI used the number of years of schooling. However, the Human Capital Index uses quality adjusted learning, which includes both quantity, that is the number of years, as well as the quality of education. Now, the second major difference between the Human Capital Index and the Human Development Index is that the Human Capital Index excludes per capita income. However, the Human Development Index uses the per capita income. So these are the two important differences in the Human Capital Index and the Human Development Index. Now, to know about the Human Development Index, you can go through the NCERT of class 12th of Human Geography. So in the chapter 4, it talks about the human development. And under the subtopic measuring human development, it talks in detail about the Human Development Index. So under this, it says that the Human Development Index ranks countries based on their performance in three key areas. And these three key areas are the first, health, education, and access to resources. So the countries are ranked under HDI based on the performances on these three criteria. And regarding the health, the key indicator that has been chosen is the life expectancy at birth. And regarding education, the key factor that has been used is the adult literacy rate and the gross enrollment ratio. And under this, the gross enrollment ratio represents the access to resources, which shows that how many children in a country are able to access the knowledge. So these are the three factors on which the Human Development Index is based. So now when the Human Capital Index is compared to the HDI, we know that under the Human Capital Index, the education factor is calculated based on the quality adjusted schooling. However, under the HDI, it only uses the literacy rate and the gross enrollment ratio. Secondly, under the health, this index talks about the survival rates, that is the under 5 mortality rates, as well as the rate of stunting for children under the age of 5. However, the Human Development Index uses the life expectancy at birth. So you should know about the differences between the Human Capital Index and the Human Development Index. And to understand the Human Development Index better, you should go through the NCERT of class 12, that is the Human Geography. And regarding the data that has been released by the World Development Report by the World Bank, it says that advanced economies such as North America and Europe mostly have a Human Capital Index value of about 0.75. And this can be seen in the graph here. It says that Singapore has the best Human Capital Index. And the countries like United Kingdom, United States, China and Russia have a Human Capital Index of around 0.7 or 0.75. However, the countries of South Asia and the Sub-Saharan Africa have the lowest Human Capital Index. And this can be seen in the map here that African and the Sub-Saharan countries are the worst performers. However, the countries that have performed averagely are the countries like India, Bangladesh, etc. And the Human Capital Index for India is estimated at about 0.44, and this can be seen in the map here. And one important fact is that India is behind Bangladesh. However, it is ahead of South Africa in terms of Human Capital Index. And regarding the questions that are asked in the previous year, in the year 2014, the question asked about the organization which publishes the World Economic Outlook. So the correct answer is the International Monetary Fund. And in the year 2017, it asked about the Global Gender Gap Index. So it is produced by the World Economic Forum. Now in the year 2018, the question was related to the Rule of Law Index, and it is published by the World Justice Project. Now the question that was asked in 2012 required us to know about the factors on which the multidimensional poverty index is calculated. So the statements given are that it calculates the deprivation of education, health, assets and services at the household level. So this is a correct statement related to the multidimensional poverty index. However, the other two statements that were given were only given to confuse the students. So these were not the correct statements. So the correct answer in this case was only A, that is one only. So that is why the components of the Human Capital Index are also important, and you should learn these factors on which the Human Capital Index is calculated. Now in the year 2018, a question was asked directly related to the human capital formation as a concept. So the question reads, human capital formation as a concept is better explained in terms of a process which enables. So the first statement reads, individuals of a country to accumulate more capital. Now, it is incorrect because the human capital formation is more related to health and education, and it is not related to the accumulation of capital in the hands of individuals of a country. Now, the second statement reads increasing the knowledge, skill levels, and capacities of the people of a country. Now, this statement is correct because we know that increasing the knowledge, skill levels, and capacities of a country will lead to the development of human capital. The third is the accumulation of tangible wealth. Now, this statement is also incorrect because the human capital formation is related to the accumulation of intangible wealth. So, this statement is correct. Now, if you look at the options, the correct answer is C, that is 2 and 4. So, to understand the human capital formation in detail, you should go through the chapter 5 of the class 11th NCERT, that is the Indian Economic Development. So this will give you a better understanding of the human capital formation as a concept. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now, this article on page number 13 reads that higher provisioning impacts IndusInd Bank Q2 net profit. So now, without getting into the details of this article, let us try to understand what is meant by the word provisioning. And this will form a part of the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic economic development. Now, we know that banks undertake deposit and lending operations in the market. Now, out of these loans provided by the banks, some are not repaid and become non-performing assets or the bad loans. Now, when a loan is not paid, the bank has to meet this loss out of other sources. So, simply the provisioning means that banks have to set aside an amount in order to meet these future anticipated losses. So, provisioning simply means that the amount that is set aside by the banks in order to meet the future anticipated losses or the losses which can occur in future. So this amount is set aside out of its capital or the profits. And out of the capitals or profit, the banks set aside a certain percentage of amounts as a provisioning requirement amount. And this provisioning requirement is done as per the RBI norms. So this is a very simple concept to understand that the banks have to set aside certain amount of their capital and profits in order to meet the future anticipated losses. And these provisioning requirements are done as per the norms which are clarified by the Reserve Bank of India. Now let us look at a question which can be asked in the preliminary examination based on the provisioning requirements. So you should attempt this question and put your answers in the comment section. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now this article on page number 1 talks about a pollution forecast system that has been unveiled for the city of Delhi. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 3 of the mains examination under the topic environment. Now this has been unveiled because of the issue of stubble burning in the areas neighboring the city of Delhi. Now the issue of stubble burning has been covered in detail by Ankur sir in the DNS of 12th October 2018. So to understand this issue, you should go through this article. However, we will try to understand some facts related to the forecast system of Delhi. Now previously in the year 2015, a question was asked related to the pollution problem in Delhi. Now this was asked in the General Studies paper 1. So let us try to understand some key facts related to the pollution forecast system. Now we will try to understand this issue in a question answer format from the preliminary examination point of view. So now why is this article in news? Now this is in news because an air quality early warning system for Delhi has been announced by the central government. And this system will alert about the likelihood of extreme pollution events and dust storms 3 days in advance. So this is an early warning system that has been designed for the city of Delhi. That is why this article is in news. Now what is the purpose of this air quality early warning system or the AQEWS? So this system intends for real-time observations with 72-hour lead time of air quality over the region of Delhi. So this means that it will provide the information regarding the air quality in the region of Delhi 3 days ahead of the event. Further, this early warning system provides details about the natural aerosols from dust and dust storms and also about the particulate matters using data from different satellites. Further, this system will provide predictions based on a model which is called the atmospheric chemistry transport model. Now, the details of this model are very technical in nature and are not important for us from exam point of view. So, the only point that you should remember is the name of this model which has been used by these organizations. Further, the AQEWS or the Air Quality Early Warning System will provide warning messages and alerts to take necessary steps like the Graded Response Action Plan. And we know that this Graded Response Action Plan is invoked as and when the air pollution emergency arises in Delhi. So under this, various construction activities which contribute to the dust particles and various different measures are announced by the government. Now, this aspect is very important for us from preliminary examination point of view, that who has developed the air quality early warning system. Now, this system has been jointly developed by the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, Indian Meteorological Department, and National Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting. So, these three institutions are involved in the development of the air quality early warning system. And you should know that the ministry under which this system will work is the Ministry of Earth Sciences and Environment. So all these points are important for us from preliminary examination point of view. With this, let us move on to the next article. This article on page number 9 analyzes the recent proposed amendments to the Right to Information Act. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 2 of the mains examination. It will also form a part of the General Studies paper 4, that is the Ethics and Integrity, as the right to information has been clearly mentioned in the syllabus of paper 4. And previously in the year 2015, a question was asked related to the recent developments related to the RTI Act. So that is why the analysis of the proposed amendments to the RTI Act become important for us from exam point of view. So let us try to understand the key points that have been highlighted by the author in this article. Now let us look at the proposed amendments to the RTI Act. So under the proposed amendments to the RTI Act, the central government wants to empower itself with the power to decide the tenure, salaries, allowances, and other terms of service of all the information commissioners and the chief information commissioner. Now, the author has highlighted that this may have an impact on the autonomy of information commissioners, and it will also impact their power to decide on various contentious issues. Now, the amendment has also been proposed on the equivalence of chief information commissioner with that of the Election Commission of India. So the present situation is that the tenure and the salary of the information commissioners is equivalent to that of the Chief Election Commissioner of India. So in this regard, the Chief Information Commissioner shall hold the office for a period of 5 years, and he shall not be eligible for reappointment. Further, the salaries and allowances payable to the Chief Information Commissioner shall be the same as that of the Chief Election Commissioner, and the salary of the Information Commissioner shall be the same as that of Election Commissioners. So the salary and allowances of the Chief Information Commissioner will be the same as that of Chief Election Commissioner. However, the amendment to the RTI Act has proposed to do away with these provisions. So under the proposed amendments, the government wants to do away with the 5-year tenure for the information commissioners. And the central government will further prescribe the tenure for the Chief Information Commissioner according to the new amendments. So the existing provision will be changed with a new provision. Further, the salaries and allowances payable to the Chief Information Commissioner and the Information Commissioners shall now be prescribed by the central government, and this will be different from the presently existing system. So these are the changes which have been proposed on the equivalence of Chief Information Commissioner with that of Election Commissioner of India. Now, the reasons provided by the government in doing away with the equivalence of the Central Information Commissioner with that of Election Commissioners is that these two bodies have two different mandates. Further, the central government has said that, unlike the Election Commission, the Central Information Commission is not a constitutional body and it is just a statutory body. So, according to the government, the CIC and the Information Commissioners should not be at parity with respect to tenure, terms of salary, and allowances with that of the Chief Election Commissioners. So, the two reasons provided are that the two bodies have different mandate. Further, Election Commission is a constitutional body, while the Chief Information Commissioner is a statutory body. So both these bodies should not have parity in terms of tenure, salary and allowances, etc. Now presently the RTI Act provides for a balance between privacy and the transparency. So it does so by disallowing the disclosure of personal information if it has no relation to any public activity or would cause unwarranted invasion of privacy. So presently the RTI Act provides for a balance between privacy and transparency. Now, in this regard, the Justice Sri Krishna Committee has proposed an amendment that would broaden or increase the definition of harm caused to a person. So, by this amendment, the disclosure of personal information will be further restricted. And now, as the disclosure of personal information would be restricted, the transparency in this case would be reduced, which is not the actual purpose of RTI, because RTI tries for increasing the transparency in the governmental affairs. So these proposed amendments will reduce the transparency efficacy of the RTI. Now the authors have further highlighted the probable impact of these amendments to the RTI Act. So the author highlights that such a drastic change in tenure and salary will put these information commissioners at the whims and discretion of the central government, and it will further impact the autonomy of this institution. The author has further highlighted that officers in the commission will now hesitate in taking decision with respect to disclosure of any information pertaining to the government. So, in short, the independence and autonomy would be impacted. Further, the author has highlighted that such a change would eliminate the parity that the Chief Information Commissioner presently has with the Chief Election Commissioner. Further, the author has highlighted that the proposed amendments would impact the working nature of appeal mechanism under the RTI. So, in this regard, the author further says that the State Information Commission may now be reluctant to disclose information which might be used against the government in power. This is because the terms and references of the State Information Commissioner now will be under the control of central government, and it will not be at parity with the other election commissioners. Further, the author says that it will increase the hold of center on the Central Information Commission and its officers, and it will be detrimental to the autonomy of the officers at all levels. So these are the key points that have been highlighted by the author with regard to the amendments proposed to the RTI Act. The author has also highlighted issues other than the proposed amendments. In this regard, the author has highlighted that there is delay in the appointment of Information Commissioner. And this delay in appointment of the Information Commissioner also results in the delay in disposal of the cases pertaining to RTI. And this delay in disposal of cases results in clogging of the entire RTI mechanism. So in short, the delay in appointment of the Information Commissioner results in the delay in disposal of RTI cases, and due to this, the whole system is getting affected, clogged, or the system is getting choked. Further, the author has highlighted that Section 4 of the RTI Act requires suo motu disclosure of lot of information by each public authority, which means that under the Section 4 of RTI, the government authorities are required to disclose information on their own. However, such disclosures have remained less than satisfactory because most of the public offices have not done this suo motu disclosure of information. And the author has further highlighted that CIC has repeatedly directed the regulators of the banking sector to disclose the information on the wrongdoings of the banks. However, such informations by the banking sector have not been disclosed till date, and they pose a great threat to the purpose and the spirit of the RTI Act. So the issues related to the proposed amendments to the RTI Act have been highlighted by the author in this article. So these are important for us from exam point of view. With this, let us move on to the next article. This article on page number 9 argues that insurance-based schemes like Ayushman Bharat are no substitute for public provisioning of health. So in this article, the authors analyze the shortcomings and the challenges in the implementation of Ayushman Bharat, and at the same time they argue that why is the expenditure of government on the health issues is important. So let us try to understand the key points that have been highlighted by the author in this article. Now this will form a part of the General Studies paper 2 of the mains examination, and it will form a part of the subtopic issues relating to the development and management of social or services related to health. Now previously in the DNS of 25th September, the other challenges related to the Ayushman Bharat have been discussed. So you should go through this article as well to understand the other challenges related to the implementation of Ayushman Bharat scheme. Now the fundamental question that the author is highlighting is that whether an insurance-based healthcare system is better than the public provisioning of health or the public expenditure of health, which means that can the insurance-based healthcare system replace the government expenditure on health? In this, the authors have argued that though usually insurance-based schemes are considered more efficient in terms of delivery and coverage, this is because such schemes pose less financial burden on government. However, the authors have highlighted various points against this argument. So let us try to understand these arguments in detail. Now first, the authors question the funding of Ayushman Bharat, and they highlight that the funds allocated by the government under the Ayushman Bharat are insufficient. So in this, the authors have analyzed the expenditure on another insurance-based scheme, which was the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana or RSBY. Now under this Yojana, the authors say that the actual expenditure for the financial year of 2017 to 18 was only 470.52 crores. And the amount that was allocated for this scheme was 1000 crore rupees. Now this scheme provided for a maximum expenditure of up to rupees 30,000 in healthcare, and it covered about 3.63 crore families. Now regarding the Ayushman Bharat scheme, the authors say that it covers 10 crore families and the maximum coverage is of rupees 5 lakh. So by comparing both these schemes, the authors say that the coverage has risen by about 3 times. And the authors further say that by assuming that the premium amount rises by half to account for the increase in the amount covered under the Ayushman Bharat. This scheme would require an allocation of more than 26,000 crore. This means that the allocation under the Ayushman Bharat should be 13 times more than what has been allocated right now. And you should know that the government has allocated rupees 2,000 crores for the Ayushman Bharat mission. However, the targets are more as compared to the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana. So in short, the authors say that the funds that have been allocated are insufficient in the case of Ayushman Bharat. Now the authors have highlighted other issues with the design of the Ayushman Bharat. Now under this, the authors say that the out-of-pocket medical expenditure generally rises with a fall in expenditure on public provisioning of health. So this means that as and when the government expenditure on health decreases, the out-of-pocket medical expenses for the normal consumers or the citizens increases heavily. In this regard, the authors say that in India, where just 1% of the GDP is allocated for public health, 65% of the expenditure is out of the pocket for the citizens of India. And this impacts the poor people adversely. Secondly, the authors say that further there has been an increase in the hospitalization in private hospitals. And under this, the authors say that as a result, the expenditure not covered under the scheme has risen. So the authors simply highlight that the expenditure on the issues which have not been covered by the Ayushman Bharat have increased. So simply the authors have highlighted that the expenditure on the issues which are not covered under the Ayushman Bharat scheme have been rising. Further, the authors say that most insurance schemes do not cover outpatient visit costs, which means that most of the insurance schemes which are related to the health do not cover the simple checkups for the patients. They only cover the hospitalization charges. However, the authors have highlighted that these outdoor checkups or the outpatient visits cost significantly higher for chronic illnesses. For example, diabetes, tuberculosis, etc. So in this, the authors say that if there was a public provisioning of such services, the burden of spending would not have fallen on the patients. So simply the authors argue that the public expenditure on such services should be more than what is presently being done. The authors further highlight that the insurance-based government schemes have an inbuilt inflationary bias. Under this, the authors say that such insurance-based government schemes induce more hospitalization. This is because the amount would only be disbursed if the patient is hospitalized. So if the supply is less, the insurance premium will further increase, and hence the burden on the government will also increase. So the authors say that this rise could be controlled by a simultaneous increase in the public medical services. Further, the authors have highlighted that the insurance industry is driven by profits. Now the authors further highlight that the insurance industry is driven by profits. In this regard, the authors say that these countries will only participate in such insurance-based schemes if the amount that is being disbursed by them are less than the premium they receive. So simply if the disbursements are less than the amount they receive as premium, that will only make their participation in such schemes profitable. Now the authors have further highlighted that if the premium payment is done by the government, it will set an upper limit to the public healthcare expenditure. This means that now the government will only focus on paying the premiums for the healthcare expenditure, and they will not invest in healthcare infrastructure. So the authors further say that there would hence be gradual withdrawal of the state from the health provisioning services. And this is because of pressure from both the private healthcare providers and the medical health insurance companies. The authors further highlight that the government would thereby lose control over setting the costs in the medical sector. So in short, the authors say that if the governments only focus on the insurance-led schemes, they will not invest more on the public health services. And this will lead to a gradual withdrawal of the state from providing the healthcare services directly to the poor people of the country. Now the authors conclude by saying that there is no shortcut to universal health coverage. And the authors highlight that countries like Thailand and Mexico have achieved it through significant provisioning to the public health infrastructure. So in short, the authors say that expenditure on public health infrastructure is very important for providing universal health coverage. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now this article on page number 14 talks about the RBI's initiative to buy $120 billion government securities under the open market operations. And this is being done in order to provide for durable liquidity needs of various participants in the Indian economy. And we know that due to the limited liquidity in the market, the companies like IL and FS started defaulting. Now, this open market operations become very important for us from exam point of view, because previously two questions have been asked in the preliminary examination based on the open market operations. And we have covered this open market operations in detail in the Daily News Simplified of 25th September 2018. So you should go through this video in order to understand the details of open market operations, because this has been consistently in news and becomes very important for us from exam point of view. With this, let us move on to the next article. This article on page number 13 reads that most of the companies like WhatsApp, Flipkart and Paytm have failed to comply with the RBI circular which had asked for the requirements of data localization. Now, due to this failure to comply with the RBI circular, the news read that the defaulters may face action. So, to understand the concept of data localization in detail, you should go through the Daily News Simplified of 10th October 2018, which was covered by Basavasa. With this, we have come to the end of today's discussion. Now let us move on to the question for the day.